For as long as people have called this place home, they've been welcomed with clean air, clean water, and an abundance of nature. As time went on, people saw the need to balance how we build cities with how we protect farms and forests. That's why across Greater Portland, in 24 cities and 3 counties, there's one Metro government that brings us all together to maintain that vital balance, to provide services across cities and counties, to create a better future together. Hello, we're Metro. We plan for housing, jobs, and safe transportation. We protect land, air, and water by managing garbage and recycling. We support arts and culture by overseeing local venues to keep the economy growing. And we connect people to nature across 17,000 acres of parks and trails, and at the Oregon Zoo. Metro is all of us working together, connecting how we live today with how we plan for the future. Hello, we're Metro, and so are you.
Hi, I'd like to call the Metro Council business meeting for April 27th, 2023 to order. Connor, will you please call the roll for attendance?
Yes, thank you, President Peterson. Councillor Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Nolan.
Present.
Councillor Wong.
Present.
Councillor Rosenthal.
Present.
Councillors Gonzalez and Simpson are both excused today, and President Peterson.
Here, thank you. Before we begin our agenda items, Connor, can you please play the safety video for our in-person attendees?
Hi, I'm Justin Dunlap, and I'm the department head stagehand electrician at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall. Safety is a big part of my job. From electrical, making sure that I stay up to date on the NFPA codes and regulations, to rigging, where we make sure that everything is safely suspended overhead, to egress, ensuring that our audiences, performers, and technicians have the safest possible route in case of emergency. I'm out here at the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall, and you're in the Metro Regional Center. Please note that we're on the 3rd floor of the building. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the steps to the 2nd floor and exit through the main entrance by the reception desk. We will meet in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue.
All right, I think we've got somebody's unmuted on Zoom, perhaps. Okay, sounds all good now.
All right, thank you. Before we get into our public comment, I would just like to announce that it's Filbert the Beaver at the zoo. It's his 12th birthday today, so happy birthday to Filbert. He is known as the branch manager. Just to liven us up a bit. Okay, Connor, we will move into our public communication portion of our agenda. I understand that we have some folks that would like to provide public communication on an agenda item during this period, and I just want to let folks know, normally we don't do that, but we will do that today at their request. So do you want to open up our public comment period? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. At this time, we'll take public comment on non-agenda items, and we'll have an opportunity a little bit later in the meeting for public comment on resolution number 23-5320. But for anyone who wishes to testify on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. If you haven't signed up in advance, you can do so now, either if you're joining us virtually by hitting the raise hand button, which depending on your version of Zoom is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. If you're joining us in person, you can fill out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bring that up to me. As a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. For anybody testifying virtually today, I'll call your name. You'll see a window pop up asking you to accept the promotion to a panelist. Once you accept that promotion, you'll rejoin as a panelist where you'll be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. So with that, I will give folks in the audience, both virtual and in person, another couple of seconds to get their hands up.
My understanding is we have 2 people that would like to testify during this period on
Oh,
an
okay,
agenda item.
during
and I-
right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
thanks. So in that case, I'll call up the first person that I've got signed up to testify in advance. And that is Steve Baker. So Steve, I'm going to go ahead and promote you up. All right. Steve, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera now. You'll have 3 minutes, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon, Council Peterson, President Peterson, and members of the Metro Council. My name is Steve Baker. I'm the Operations Manager with Willamette Resources Incorporated. WRI is a subsidiary of Republic Services. Our transfer station is based out of Wilsonville. We have been an integral part of the South Metro region for roughly 30 years. WRI also provides a public recycling depot that accepts curbside recycles as well as many other hard to recycle items. We have continually been at the forefront of innovation solutions for our communities around garbage and also recycling, along with providing good careers for many individuals. My purpose here today is to provide our company's view about Metro's solid waste fees and the need to increase transparency on how the funds or fees are used. As you are aware, WRI, along with all other private transfer station owners, have been engaged with Metro staff. About half of Metro handles how they handle the regional system fee and the tip fees. Through these conversations, we've identified that Metro blends funds from the RSF and tip fees into Metro's reserve. We believe the process leads to a challenge of transparency for our industry and general public to understand how the RSF supports Metro's capital operational activities. The operations of 2 Metro-owned transfer stations, Central and South, to our company's understanding, should be funded by Metro's tip fees. Through the previous staff reports, it is evident that the gate rates do not cover the cost of service and that Metro's reserve funds are being used to subside operational costs. As staff presented during the April 11th work session, if the true cost of service were to be covered by Metro station gate rates, then the rates would be increased by 17.7% to $92.26, not inclusive of the additional fee and taxes added. The total tip fee should increase from $123.45 to $141.78, or close to 15%. Council is aware all facilities in this region, private and public, pay a regional system fee. Why would only Metro-owned facilities have access to the RS reserve funds? One of the goals-based allocation requirements for private stations is to match or below Metro's tip fees. Private stations do not have the ability to subside operationals with reserve funds that is being paid by the entire region. Operating transfer station requires a significant cost, both in general operating expenses and capital. We believe Metro has shown this in providing clarity to the tip fee should actually be to cover this cost. Because of this, we believe keeping the RSF at current rates, $29.37 a ton, and adjusting the mixed solid waste tip fee to $92.26, clearly covering Metro's operating costs, is the responsible option for the long-term stability of the system. As for many years, we and the other private transfer stations remain committed to continue partnering with staff.
You're past 3 minutes now. If you could wrap it up in the next 10 seconds.
Okay. On behalf of Republic Services, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to engage and provide feedback. I hope this feedback is seriously considered when evaluating what the future should look like and would look like with Metro-owned stations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next up we have Mike Leichner. So Mike, you can take any of these 4 seats up here. No need to mute or unmute, but you can move it closer to yourself if you like. And you'll, once again, have 3 minutes, and your time will begin when you begin speaking. Yep, it's live.
Okay. Good afternoon, Council President Peterson and members of the Metro Council. I am Mike Leichner, President of Pride Recycling Company. We are a woman-owned and family-operated transfer station in Sherwood, Oregon. Our family has been in the solid waste and recycling industry for over 100 years in the metro area. We have been providing transfer services to Washington County communities for over 30 years. Pride Recycling also operates a full-service public recycling depot that accepts curbside recyclables as well as many other hard-to-recycle items. Our transfer station received one of the first innovation and investment grants to expand our facility so we could start accepting residential yard debris with food scraps. This expansion made it possible for 4 cities in Washington County to begin accepting food scraps in their yard debris. I'm here today to speak about Metro's solid waste fees and the need to increase transparency on how the funds from the fees are used. Pride, along with the other private transfer station owners in their metro region, are communicating with staff about how Metro handles the regional system fee and the tip fees. Through those conversations, it has been confirmed that Metro blends funds from the RSF and tip fees into Metro's reserve. This is concerning because it is difficult, if not impossible, for us or the public to quantify how much RSF supports Metro's capital or operational activities, items that should be funded by Metro tip fees. Metro's reserve funds are being used to subsidize operational costs because the current mixed solid waste portion of the tip fees does not cover all operating costs. All facilities in the region, private and public, pay regional system fees, but only Metro facilities have access to those fees. All private facilities have a cap on wet waste tons we can receive at our facilities, where Metro has a minimum set amount, resulting in higher tons going to Metro facilities, which allows Metro to build their reserves. Private facilities could not build reserves in those scenarios as our facilities have tonnage caps. If Metro continues to subsidize their operational costs with reserve funds, that includes RSF dollars, it is especially concerning as one of the private facility tonnage allocation goals requires us as private facilities to match Metro's tip fee. Given that context, we recommend holding the RSF at status quo, $29.37 per ton, and raising the mixed solid waste tip fee to cover Metro's operational costs, which staff presented in option 1. Requires an MSW tip fee of $92.26 per ton. Metro would then cover operational costs in full while leaving the regional system fee at $29.37. We and the other private transfer stations are committed to continue working with staff on these issues in the future, but there is also an immediate need to address the issues we raised here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, I will give folks in the audience another couple of seconds to put their hands up for testimony on non-agenda items or at this time for resolution number 23-5320. So once again, that raise hand button is at the bottom of your screen, whoops, or with the reactions tab. And so with that, I don't see any other hands raised at this time, President Peterson.
Thank you. I don't see anybody coming forward either, and I will close the public communication portion of the meeting and move on to our consent agenda. Councilors, today's consent agenda now consists of 4 items. Resolution 23-5326 for the purpose of appointing Public Engagement Review Committee members. Resolution number 23-5327 for the purpose of appointing Audit Committee members. Resolution number 23-5328 for the purpose of appointing members for the Committee on Racial Equity. And resolution number 23-5329 for the purpose of reappointing 8 members to the Tri-County Planning Body. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second? It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Nolan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. I would just like to note on all of these appointments that we have made, we are starting to work on creation of a more proactive process so that we can have a little bit more conversation upfront on what the committee does, what's before the committee that's coming up over the next couple of years, what is the outreach plan to provide information to a wide range of audiences of who we're trying to put on these committees, and then when it comes before us, we'll have a better understanding of why the recommendation from staff on the selected members. So I'm very pleased about that, and I think our COO, Marisa Madrigal, and Councilor Lewis's help on trying to figure out, and all the staff's help, as we have a lot coming at us to dig a little deeper and have a better understanding. So just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll move on to our resolution for the day, resolution number 23-5320, for the purpose of adopting solid waste fees at the Metro transfer stations and the regional system fee for fiscal year 23-24. Counselors, as you recall, we last discussed our solid waste fees at our April 11th meeting. At that meeting, we had an in-depth discussion about the solid waste fees, the system as a whole, and how Metro's consideration and decision today have far-reaching impacts throughout the region. Impacts on local government partners, business, industry, and regional residents. I also want to remind you of why Council gave direction last year to support rate predictability in our solid waste fees. Our direction last year was to set an increased cap of 8% over the next 5 years to help our local government partners and local businesses plan their businesses for the future. Rate predictability is so important, and not just to our partners, but also to our ratepayers. It's important to ensure that industry can meet the needs of the region without large increases in cost of service. We have clearly articulated as a council that we have other major system-wide issues with the priorities of the waste system and how it is funded, the incentives, the disincentives to actually reducing waste going to the landfill, for example. And our private and public partners are questioning the rate transparency in the rate system as well. However, at the work session a couple weeks ago, we asked staff to prepare a resolution based on the staff recommendation of scenario 3, which kept the promise to the cities that we would provide more stability and predictability. Since then, there have been questions from individual councilors on what other options we could pursue. Today, we have 5 councilors present, and we need to pass this resolution per the charter with a vote of 4, not the majority present. I would like to suggest that we have a staff presentation on the resolution as it stands, based on that scenario 3, and the other options that have been asked to consider, and take some time to talk about those benefits and costs. I would also like to hold the high possibility or even need, based on the possibility of a change in direction to what was presented to the public with the resolution, that we hold this vote for a future date when we have a full council present and potential changes to a resolution as well as any other stakeholder engagements that's needed. After our discussion today, we will hold the public comment on this resolution and then make a decision whether to move forward today on a vote or not, or to hold this over. And as we move through this discussion, I will be asking you to be very specific on where you sit on all of the variables so that we can get clear direction and be able to actually vote the next time we come back together. The regional system, I will be looking for the overall rate increase that you are looking for, the regional system fee rate portion, what rate you think is appropriate, and the mixed solid waste fee so that we can better understand where we all sit. And again, give clear council direction to the next vote if we hold it over. So do I have an agreement that that's the general direction? Any, okay, thumbs up. Great. With that, we will move on to the staff presentation. We have our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Kennedy, and Financial Planning Director, Cinnamon Williams, here to present the staff portion of this resolution. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Council President Peterson, members of the council. If we could pull up, we have a short presentation for you. That'll come up in just a second here. Great, thank you very much. So Resolution 23-5320 presents the staff recommendation for increases to Metro's solid waste fees effective July 1st, 2023. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, so where we are in the process, every fiscal year we have 2 processes that run somewhat concurrently, our fee setting process and our budget process. And this time of year is the point at which they start to intersect.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. So we're in the April, May, June part of that process. So the solid waste fees have been developed based on the requested budget put together by the department and the proposed budget recommended by the COO to the council. Next slide, please. We have done a lot of work, a lot of engagement work up to this point. So we have done, led by WPES, 3 budget forums that the department convened that included a variety of public sector partners as well as private sector partners as well. We have also had direct engagement with the private transfer station operators in a couple different formats. As you mentioned, we had a work session with the council a couple weeks ago, as well as the presentation of the Waste Prevention Environmental Services budget, and there was a public hearing on that same day as well. Next slide, please. So as a quick reminder, the solid waste fees have a number of individual elements. So at the Metro transfer stations, the solid waste fee includes the tonnage charge or the mixed solid waste fee, any minimum charges we assess, as well as transaction fees. All customers in the region, whether their waste goes to a Metro transfer station or a private transfer station, are assessed the regional system fee and the community enhancement fee, as well as the Metro excise tax and pass-through fees from DEQ. Next slide, please. The staff recommendation, consistent with the policy direction given by the Metro Council last year, is to target an overall increase to the tip fee of approximately 8%. So the staff recommendation you have increases the total tip fee $10.36 a ton for a total of 8.4 cents. But again, that total tip fee includes a number of components: the mixed solid waste fee, the regional system fee, as well as the excise tax and pass-through fees. Though no council action is required to change the excise tax, that is set in Metro Code and adjusts via a formula, and the pass-through fees have not increased. Next slide, please. There are a number of other fees that when council ultimately passes a fee increase resolution will be changed. Those include commercial organics. Our staff recommendation is to continue to subsidize that fee as the program is implemented and limiting that fee increase to 8% for next fiscal year. All other materials, residential organics, clean wood, and yard debris would move closer to the cost of service over the next 3 years. And then the minimum load charge, the staff recommendation is to set that at $40, but consider that cost recovery model as part of any bigger conversations we convene over the next year, looking at solid waste fees as a whole. The last part of the Metro fee setting process is an independent review required by Metro Code. So that is included in the materials in your packet. There are two really important conclusions from that independent review. The first is that Metro's overall fee setting methodology follows best practices, is consistent with best practices. And then from a cost allocation perspective, our cost allocation methodology is technically correct and it's consistent with industry best practices. The only recommendation from the letter was that Metro continue to monitor actual revenues and expenditures consistent with the staff recommendation to closely monitor underspending. But otherwise, there were no technical comments related to our fee setting approach. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilors, questions?
Is this questions, or can we also have discussion?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, more, I think, let's delve into the scenarios that you had wanted to talk about. Do we have the slides ready to talk about other scenarios?
That would be great. Thank you, Madam President.
While we wait, I would note that there is a very small change between the fee amounts that were presented in the work session and the fees in the staff recommendation. As part of finalizing the model, we check all of our assumptions, and part of that independent review is making sure everything is correct. And there were some very small changes in the order of cents that led to differences in those fees from what was presented in earlier this month.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Nolan, can I turn it over to you to just start the conversation?
Sure.
Thanks.
Thanks, Madam President. I really appreciate all the work that staff has done in briefing us individually. Your team and the WPES team spent a lot of time with me personally. We had a great conversation during work session. And I also understand that this is a messy subject. You push one part and something else pops out. And I'm going to push another part this time. Madam President, colleagues, my priorities include staying with the commitment we made to local governments for predictability and certainty, and that means sticking to an 8% overall increase as a cap for increases each year. The other thing I think good practice suggests we should do is move closer to a cost of service model for our operations, which is reflected primarily in the tip fee at our stations. Finally, I mean, I guess coming back to the 8%, it isn't just predictability for local governments, but I want to do things that avoid an incentive or a result that puts more garbage on the street because people can't afford their local curbside service. All of that together, from my perspective, and acknowledge what you have said, Madam President, that this entire thing warrants really sophisticated review and digging into, which the staff is capable of doing, but not on a timeline that will accommodate our commitment not only to predictability of rate increases, but also to decisions, final decisions, so that they can make local collection fee determinations. I am inclined to think that the 8% should be a limit overall. And if we add to that an objective of moving incrementally, because I don't think we can get there in one step and stay within the 8%, but moving toward cost of service, that's partially captured in option 3B, but option 3B exceeds the 8% overall. And so unless there's another way to do it, I would favor keeping the regional system fee stagnant or maybe a marginal increase so that the net result with the movement you've already proposed for the tip fee, the net increase overall for excise fee and regional system fee and transaction fee stays within the 8% cap. And I think that is not something, as talented as he is, that Mr. Kennedy could do for us on the fly.
So just to summarize, what I'm hearing from you is not a specific on the two fees that make up the 8%, but you want an 8% cap and then a freeze on the regional system fee, essentially, at least.
Yes.
And then
I think
increase.
the freeze on the regional fee is sort of an outcome of the commitment to an 8% cap overall and movement toward cost of service for the tip fee for our own operations. That probably results in a zero or de minimis increase. There's only that much room for the regional system fee.
Did we work out a scenario at one point that does just that, the 8% with a freeze on the?
Yes, Council President, it was scenario 4B. Connor also has that one where we could bring that up. Under this scenario, the regional system fee is frozen and the mixed solid waste fee is increased because, as we've discussed in the past, the funds don't cross over. Freezing the regional system fee would require cuts on the regional system fee side of the house. Because scenario 3 already includes 6% underspending, the cuts to the regional system fee would be between $3 to $5 million. So were council to adopt option 4B, we would also need to amend the budget to reflect cuts.
Follow up on that, Madam President? This one Mr. Kennedy may have in his hip pocket. I agree with the explanation you just gave us, Ms. Madrigal, with the exception that commingled reserves are a source of funding. Any critical services that would otherwise be unfundable on the RSF side. We can have an arm wrestle about how we would prioritize those services, and I will tell you, Metro Paint and RID are not things that I would think would be something that could come back to us. But Mr. Kennedy, what's the total balance in the reserve now, and what's our policy for the minimum amount in reserve? Oh, Cinnamon.
Hello, Cinnamon Williams, Financial Planning Director. Hi, Council, Council President Peterson, Councilor Nolan, good question. Our audited balance for the start of this year was approximately around $39 million for our reserves. We do have approximately $10.2 million that's restricted, that we can't use at all. And then another, I would say, Philip, it's probably about, I think it's about 14 million that's in capital, and then the rest is sort of our, we have about 10 million in rate stabilization, and then the rest is the reserves we just use for the operating fund for hopefully, and all of that together, it includes a 45-day operating reserve. So we use that rate stabilization dollars to sort of get to our 45-day minimum reserve balance.
So it is bad practice going on an ongoing basis to use reserves for supporting operating expenses. However, in a situation where we are already in a process of making some changes in the way we operate, WPES addressing some of the concerns raised by the recent auditor's report, I would be comfortable keeping as a possibility, if needed, that we could tap those reserves for any programs that need to be funded on the RSF side.
On a one-year.
On a one-time,
Yeah.
pinky swear basis, only this one time,
Okay,
Madam President.
thank
Council
you.
President,
Yes.
if I could clarify just the budget implications, because, so, option 4B would require budget reductions, but also includes a reduction in the reserves by 2.6 million, and a reduction of the capital budget of 4.5 million. So this, to get to the freeze of the regional system fee, we're already hitting those buckets. Not to say that you couldn't, scoop deeper, but I just want to be clear that those things are already in play to some extent to get to that freeze.
Thank you for the clarification. So if I were to try and summarize one more time, you're at 8% overall cap and a freeze, essentially a freeze on the regional system fee and whatever percentage bump up that is then on the mixed solid waste fee. Is that in 4B, what is that, a 10 or 14 and a half?
It's about 12.5%.
Is that what's in 3B?
4B. To achieve an overall 8% increase to the total tip fee, if the regional system fee was frozen, the mixed solid waste fee would increase 12.5%.
And full cost of service, option 1 was what?
14.7%, I
So
believe.
it's incremental, but not all the way there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for starting the conversation and putting that out there. Why don't we just go with Councilor Rosenthal and go down the line? Councilor Rosenthal, if we could go kind of stepwise, any questions you have, and then specifically where you are with the overall rate, the regional system fee, and the mixed solid waste fee.
I'll pass for now.
Okay. Councilor Wong.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and thank you for staff for the various scenarios and all the planning happening. I'm a strong believer in keeping our promises and offering predictability, but I also understand that circumstances change over time. And I would like us to consider moving to a model of more cost recovery I understand we set an 8% expectation, but that was also before we hit such a high inflationary period at the end of last year. So I think the world has changed, and many of our constituents that come talk to us recognize that costs have gone up. And I don't see how we can encourage private transfer stations to match, our rates while we are subsidizing them from other buckets. I just don't understand how that's a sustainable model. So I'm open to the conversation to having more of a total cost recovery model at this point. And if I have to go through, I think, I know there's specific numbers here, but I'm open to kind of an 8 to 11% overall increase. Sorry, that's probably not the most helpful, but maybe put me down for an 11.
Okay.
But I guess my point is, I'm open to a higher cost recovery model. I'd like to see more total cost recovery in the regional systems fee. I think, in scenario 3B, it was up to 14.45%. I think that's something.
For the mixed solid waste fee?
That's right, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Yes, for mixed solid, 14.5% was what was in option 3B. And then for the regional systems fee, again, I would like to see a range between the no increase to the 6.9%. It's hard to make that full call without knowing exactly what is on the cutting block potentially. So I'd like us to tighten our belts, but I don't want to lose any core services, especially in RID Patrol and Metro Paint. I also like option 3B because it does reduce the deficit, and I think we can't always be tapping into reserve. At some point we're going to have to replenish those reserves. So I like the fact that this is a good compromise where we are using some reserves, but not to the extent in some of the other options. And at the end of the day, when we have more time and energy ahead of us, so that we can look at how the whole system works. But for this period, those are kind of like the buckets I'm interested in exploring further. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm going to try and summarize what I heard, see what you agree with. I heard that you're more interested in overall rate increase of 11%. And that would be split between a regional systems fee somewhat above the freeze. It would be an increase.
Yes.
But not to the 6.9%.
Right.
So slightly above, but not a full 6.9%. And then the mixed solid waste fee that you would be interested in going as high as 14.5 or 14.7. I think we have to get clarification.
That was listed in option 3B. And if I could propose like an option 3BB, I don't know if that's how it works, but the 14.45%.
That's a little thing from Star Wars.
Right.
BB.
But yes, the 14.45% increase in mixed solid waste, and somewhere between freezing and 6.9% for regional system fee.
All right, thank you. Much appreciated. Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. As I think most people know, I've been hyper obsessed with the minimum load fee now for going on 2 years. Because I think that speaks not only to the health of the funds overall and our ability to subsidize at that kind of low end of use, but it also speaks to the public service that we provide at our stations. So in order to kind of move beyond just being focused on that number, I do know that the cost of service we need to be able to cover. And the 8% for me is not a holy cap. it is an intention towards a trend line. And obviously a trend line on year 2, you only have 2 points. So it's hard to get too far outside of the 8% for me, but I'm willing to go outside of 8% if we're able to still deliver all of the public service needs that we've committed to. And frankly, they're being demanded by the populace. So flexibility on the 8% for me is there, but we've got to be communicative about why. And also, we can't bind future council to, staying on the 8% trajectory, but just thinking through implications for future years. Because I think, we've been living without the inflationary environment being our background, and I think it's our background again. So we've just got to know that's coming at us. In terms of where I view 3B on the regional system fee, I would like us to be really intentional about not cutting program. Everybody can find something that we do that they can cut personally, and then we all have the things that we find to be absolutely core. And I cannot envision us doing anything that would harm RID, hazardous waste, and frankly, the education work that we do around hard dispose of items. And those are really big programs. So for me, I can't tell you a number right now because I would like our spreadsheet wizards to do what they're going to do in order to help us get to a place of consensus. But I'm in a hold steady or don't cut service severely on that front. Does that give you what you need for your?
We're almost there.
Yeah. Can I say it again? Minimum load fee. I look at that number every time.
The mixed solid waste fee, where would you end up on the spectrum if you're actually not cutting programs in the regional system fees? That would then have an impact on keeping to an 8+%.
Yeah.
So where would you fall on that in general?
I guess that would be my X factor that I would let the will of the group.
Oh, okay. I've already got X's all over this. You're an X factor. I wish I had the golden buzzer that I could just hit and y'all would know what the answer was. All right, so Councilor Lewis, you are keeping to an eight-ish cap, recognizing where we are, and then
8 with flexibility.
Yeah.
Don't lose that, 10 makes me happy, because it's a rounding error at that point.
Yeah. With a no cut to the regional system fee programs at this time, and a wherever that then lands the mixed solid waste fee to get to that cap. Okay. Great. Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I have two questions, actually. First of all, is it correct, I heard one proposal that said we can take it out of the reserves on a one-time basis. And is that $4.5 million to maintain the services? Is that approximately the right number? In other words, how much would we have to take out of the reserves if we didn't increase the regional systems fee and wanted to maintain all the programs? Is that about 4.5? And then the second question is, in what ways does the recent, when we made these first commitments, that was before inflation. And now we've had inflation of roughly 10 to 15%, depending on what aspect you're talking about. Has inflation affected the programs funded by the tipping fee differently than the programs funded by the regional systems fee?
If we start with your first question, I'm not going to commit to a specific number here right now, because when we developed that option 4B, we did a kind of very rough analysis on what the impact would be on the regional system fee if we froze it. It's in that $3 to $5 million range, and I think if council wanted to go that direction, we would ask for some time to really run that through our model and be precise about what that impact would be.
Okay.
In terms of inflation, I think thinking about a single indicator is kind of useful from a public communication perspective, but we actually look at our costs on a very granular basis. So there are very different factors affecting our transfer station operations and our regional system fee activities. You know, a lot of our regional system fee activities are primarily staff and materials and services, where at the transfer station operations, we have these really significant contracts for operations as well as transport and fuel. So there have been different drivers for all of those. One of the main factors driving the transfer station operations cost is the new Metro Central operating contract, which increased wages for employees, amongst a variety of other things. So like, I can't point it, you know, there's inflation affected it one way or the other. There's a number of factors that drove those costs.
Just a quick follow-up, but transportation, particularly the haulage, is affected, that's paid for primarily from the regional systems fee, is that correct? No? It's paid out of the transfer fee?
No, that, sorry, Councilor Rosenthal, that is actually paid 100% on the mixed solid waste fee.
Okay.
The transport of disposal to Columbia Ridge landfill is 100% mixed solid waste fee.
Okay, all right. And so that's, I mean, transportation has been affected a lot by the inflation. Okay, so that's a big factor. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Rosenthal, do you have any insight on the total increase of the overall rate that you are looking for?
I think, I do believe that we set a principle of trying to keep things somewhat level. I'm a little worried about where we go after this year. I am okay with 8% or something a little bit above 8%, something in that ballpark overall. And beyond that, I'm going to let other people speak.
Okay, well, it's down to you and me. So that's about it. I guess I would ask you to also, I guess, think out loud a little bit more about whether with the regional system fee, you'd want to see it frozen or no cuts to the program as a baseline.
Well, I don't want to see, I'll answer that. I don't want to see cuts to the program. And I haven't heard a complete analysis of the long-term impacts of doing a one-time taking from the reserves for that situation. So if that's going to result in substantial cuts to the existing programs, such as RID Patrol or waste or hazardous waste or stuff like that, that would not be acceptable. But if there's a way around to work around that, then keeping it flat does not particularly bother me.
Okay.
Council President?
Does that answer your
Yes.
question?
Thank you, Marisa. We're getting closer, yeah.
Just one other note, because I haven't heard it mentioned. The other things that the regional system fee funds are our compliance, our regulation, our policy making. So that's just to make sure that that stays on the table.
As well as, if I'm correct, we have a partnership with our host cities, and they receive money from that fund as well. And there is an extreme interest to have more
Yes, there is.
from those cities. So while we're looking at holding or lowering, they are looking at increasing their cut of whatever pie we have. So I think that makes it a little bit more complicated at that level. So I just want to get that on the table because I do want to recognize that. Okay, well, I tend to fall with Councilor Lewis on kind of where we're at. I'm willing to think about slightly more than 8%, but I have a very fundamental belief that because we had given direction to council, or given direction to staff, based on the recommendation of number 3, that if we were to change our direction, that we need to actually go back out and have conversations with those that we made promises to, the cities, and to also get another round of feedback from our stakeholders. And we only have a certain amount of time to do that. So I do think we need to see, and I'll get to trying to summarize this and get thumbs up of what I've heard. But I just feel very strongly that because we started down one track, the public thinks that that's the track we're going on, and we're changing that we need to make sure that we do that. And so I know that I've talked to some of you about taking responsibility and going out with staff and doing this because it's a council redirect. It's not a staff redirect, that we go out with staff to answer any technical questions, but we take responsibility for the conversation of a change in direction and get that direct input ourselves. So I appreciate the council head nods on that as well. So what I would say is I'm okay with increasing the overall rate just a little bit past what we've been talking about at 8%, but not much. I am really not interested this year in a conversation about cutting programs, although I am interested in it over time. But I know that we have questions that we need answered about what would happen if we did cut and whether that could come from the reserves at all. And that leads to yeah. So those are the two I think that we're actually getting at today. And then whatever comes out of that is an increase on the mixed solid waste fee. So if I were to try to summarize all of this, all right, I just snorted. I think what I'm hearing is that we're moving towards a slightly higher overall rate. And I don't want to give an exact number here, but it's more than 8 and it's less than 9. And I'm just going to look up and down and give you a range to play with. And then,
You have at least one objection.
yes, and Counselor Wong, yes. But what I'm hearing
And
overall.
me.
Oh,
8% is my limit.
oh, you want to stay at 8?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now we have a minimum and maximum. This is why we're gonna need a full council. And we're gonna have to hold this over. So we're gonna have to come back with, I guess, 3 scenarios that need to be discussed in the interim and then a narrowing down. It sounds like,
So if I could
Yes.
ask, so, when we started this conversation, we started with a range from full cost of service to, cuts to the regional system fee. We're narrowing in on that middle band. And we have, the published, scenario is scenario 3, which is, I believe technically at 8.4%, just for everyone's, edification. And I'm hearing from council and through your summary, President Peterson, some support for staying at 8, but not in that combination. The scenario 4B that we discussed with the freezing, but I'm also hearing discomfort with that from others. So we can feather out from those two extremes and try to narrow a little bit further.
yeah,
And kind of have some steps in there.
and get to a point where we have a revised resolution that would be published within what kind of time period do we need to actually have this conversation as not as a council, but individuals with staff, and then also to do some stakeholder outreach. And we also need to get this done so our partners can actually change all of their contracts, negotiate their contracts, correct? And their budgets, so.
I'll let Carrie speak to the public notice piece of it, and then, Brian, if you could speak to the third-party rate review and any changes that we would need to make there.
So from a public notice perspective, my microphone is, there we go. From a public notice perspective, my recommendation is that we certainly have the materials posted 24 hours in advance of the meeting. You can do walk-on amendments to resolutions. This is by resolution, so we don't need the 3 days in advance publication. But my recommendation is 24 hours in advance. And the meeting would be noticed even in advance when it's already sort of on our calendars, that folks know there is a council meeting and that this subject would be one of the subjects discussed.
So this resolution could carry forward and amendments could be made?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think from a third-party review perspective, I'm not sure that any of the options or the range of options we're considering necessarily would necessitate sending the model back for that third-party review. I think we're still within the parameters that they reviewed it. It's kind of a question of how we're implementing it. So I think from a technical perspective, we could turn the options around very quickly.
And how long do we need to be able to get out and talk to our partners?
That's an excellent question, Council President. I mean, I think if we were, doing this quickly, I plan to alert my colleagues, my peers, after this meeting that there are potential changes afoot, just so that they have awareness about that. In my case, the other city managers also have councils that they work with. I don't think that is going to be a surprise. It's just, I'll try to share with them the implications. I think the harder thing may be the budgetary impacts and getting options for you if there were going to be cuts.
I think the challenge is that putting together kind of a fair cut package would require, it would require staff reductions, and how we handle and communicate that is something that we're very careful about, particularly after going through the pandemic, and we'd want to make sure that Marta and her team had time to communicate, and that nobody heard about these potential options for the first time at a council meeting. So I think that's probably the longest piece of this.
Sure, and I also think that we're going to need at least a couple weeks for counselors to be able to reach out to mayors and have a conversation with them, as well as industry folks, to check in on this and some help organizing that to make sure we're getting the data back so that we can all know individual conversations and that those conversations were had. So we'll hold this over to a date no further than 3 weeks, if not earlier. If we can make it earlier, does that sound reasonable?
I'm still doing my calculations. Apologies, Council.
That's okay. Why don't we do public comment? We'll come back to this.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Yes.
Why don't we, counselors, if that's okay, move on to public comment on the resolution that's before us? Connor, will you please describe to the audience our public comment procedures?
Yes,
Thank you, staff. You can come back.
Thank you, President Peterson. So if anyone wishes to comment on resolution number 23-5320, now is the time to do so. If you're just joining us, you can sign up to speak by hitting the raise hand button, which, depending on your version of Zoom, is at the bottom of your screen, or within the reactions tab. If you're joining us in person, you can fill out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bring that up to me. So for those joining us on Zoom, I will call your name. You will see a window pop up asking you to accept the promotion. Once you accept that, you'll rejoin as a panelist, where you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And as a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical location. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, I will look for any hands going up in the audience in person or virtually. Once again, at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. And so with that, I do not see any hands going up, President Peterson.
Okay, thank you. Then with that, I will close public comment on the resolution before us today and resume a little bit of conversation. First of all, Brian and Cinnamon went back. Thank you. I didn't mean to dismiss you. You dismissed yourself. Could you guys come back up? I think we're going to need all the help we can get to move on to the next steps. I think what I'm hearing is that we need to hold this conversation over. And I think we have a narrower range that we're getting into that will help the direction. And we just need to figure out kind of an approximate time when this will be back so that we can get the plans in place.
Thank you, Council President. What I'm checking on with staff is the impact of a 3-week delay on the city's rate adoption processes for the hauling portion of our system. I think, I don't know if you have any insight. chatted everybody on Teams, hoping to get an answer.
The challenge with the local jurisdictions is they don't all do it the same way. Not all jurisdictions set their fees every year. Some of them set it on a rolling cycle. So, for instance, the city of Portland, I believe, sets their fees every year. But other jurisdictions, you know, it might not come back till later, and some of them are on different cycles. You know, they might set in February or March. So it's kind of across the board.
Okay, well, maybe we can come back and get more information at our next meeting at the next work section on, because I don't want to rush this, but I was trying to give enough time as a maximum. Without, I mean, if we can do it faster, then that's great.
So I'm hearing from staff that if we can give our cities a range, which I believe council has established today, that we can provide that range to them, and they can put a placeholder. So we will confirm that, but what I heard was a range of 8 to, on the bottom end, to 11 on the top.
And I just want to look up and down on it. A range of 8 to 11?
I would just comment, it's my understanding that since that change in that rate particularly with the regional systems fee, is relatively a low multiplier on the city's charges. In other words, it's about 10%, something like that. At some level, it becomes relatively a small impact. Is that correct? In other words, if it was like 8 to 8.4, that would have a 0.04% increase in their costs that they would probably have to pass on, something on that order.
I'll let Brian answer this one.
So our estimate, again, because fees kind of range widely across the metro area, that Metro's fees generally represent around 20% of the total cost of curbside garbage service. So it's an incremental change in our fee does represent a relatively small impact, though I think what you would hear from our local government partners is all the drivers that are affecting our business are also affecting the haulers, so they are anticipating increases in their base collection costs as well. So I'm not sure kind of how meaningful that distinction is going to be for the consumer.
Can I ask one other question? If we do something where we do a one-time thing, for example, take money from the reserves to cover next year's costs for certain kinds of services, is that not likely to impact kind of predictions or the kind of rate adjustments we might have to make in future years? And how hard is that to estimate at this point?
I think the challenge is any decision we make that puts off getting to the full cost of service really kind of digs a hole. So if our assumption was, or if our plan was to continue regional system fees, programs and services at the same level, but not collect an increased fee, and so kind of create an operating deficit there that we cover from reserves. If our plan was to continue those services in the following fiscal year, we would have a bigger increase to get to full cost of service. So from a good financial management perspective, our recommendation would be if our intent is not to increase the regional system fee to the full cost or close to the full cost to cover those services, then taking 1 year to and covering part of those costs out of reserves would be generally not a prudent decision, because we're creating that bigger hole in future years. That if we want to reduce activities, then we should make kind of long-term structural reductions to those programs so that the future full cost of service is more within a fee that we expect to be able to impose.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so based on the fact that we want to come back with a narrowing of the range to a scenario, and that we have a council that is interested in long-term digging into the specifics. This is just a first cut of trying to, what I'm hearing from council, deal with inflationary costs since we had that rate stabilization kind of conversation, that the council really wants to move to more of a cost recovery, effects it has to ratepayers and the industry's ability to recover costs. With all of that in mind, we would have another round of conversations just to make sure that everybody understands where we're headed and why. So I appreciate everybody's time. I know this has been a lot of work in running scenarios, and I know that a lot of change is happening around the past assumptions that the council has made to start moving in this direction. And I very much appreciate all of staff's work to try and get the answers and to understand that we really do want to move in this direction of, so.
You have two of us in the queue, Madam President, or are you
Do I?
trying to close?
I really am trying to
Discussion.
close, but go ahead, Councilor Wong and Councilor Nolan.
Great, thank you. We had this conversation, I think, last council session where, we're really interested in delivering on the outcomes that we want to see for our private partners, for the community, and for our staff. So that's why I'm offering more flexibility, as, we want to achieve these outcomes, and we don't want to hold ourselves to something that we set and that we can change. So just encouraging that kind of out-of-the-box thinking for what we want to achieve. And then I want to thank staff for all the work. I know we've kind of thrown a curveball today, and, for my colleagues and myself, that's on us, and that's the buck stops here with this council, and anything that I can do to support engaging with our stakeholders, please tap me in. I am available and happy to do that. Thank you.
Otherwise, you'll be voluntold. Just kidding.
I'll
Ma'am,
volunteer.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, Councilor Nolan.
And Madam President, I'm happy to be voluntold as well. I wanted to invite us all, my colleagues and our staff, to think a little differently. Mr. Kennedy, you said that if we borrow some from reserves this year, we could be digging a bigger hole for ourselves next year. But that's premised on the notion that we haven't spent the intervening year innovating and finding productivity improvements that would allow us to continue providing those services at a constant cost or a cost that increases less than inflation. The businesses who provide private hauling and private transfer stations can't just say, well, we want to do more services, so we're going to increase our costs because they live under, if they're haulers, under the limits that the local jurisdiction set, and if they're transfer stations, under the limits that we set. So I would invite us all to look at the potential. First of all, I think the staff is more creative than we have yet given them credit for, and they can find ways to deliver services without having the full first analysis impact. But secondly, if we do tap into reserves for a part of this, I would invite staff to look at it as buying a year of time to give them the opportunity to be more creative, be more innovative, and squeeze some more productivity out of the programs. And let us know what they need from council to make that happen.
Great, thank you. So I think coming back next week, we can get more information, and maybe we put it on the agenda, and then we can decide if we want to kick it another week from there if we need more time.
So like a little mini work session, we can talk through
Where we're
the
at.
middle scenarios, okay.
And unless we want to actually just keep it on the agenda as a resolution,
That's a good idea.
or we can have a work session on Tuesday. That's
You
fine.
can always continue it.
Yep,
Yeah.
Okay, great.
great. Thank you. Much appreciated. And with that,
Thank
we
you
are
for
holding this,
flexibility.
we're holding this
We are
over.
really twisting you around.
All right. Counselors, thank you for working through that and your patience, along with staff. We will move on to our presentation today, budget presentation from Parks and Nature Department. We have John Blasher here to give the presentation on the Parks and Nature budget. Welcome up.
Thank you, President Peterson, councilors. For the record, John Blasher, he and his pronouns. I also have Shantae Clark who's joining us today as our Parks and Nature Finance Manager. I don't know how you all do so many meetings covering so many topics in one day, but here's a little something different. So thank you for the opportunity to come and share a little bit more about our proposed budget to you all. You can go to the next slide, please. We were asked to be brief in developing this presentation for you all to leave plenty of time for conversation.
Now you know why.
Now that I've said that, we shall see what happens, but I will do my best, and I have to pick up kiddos today, so I will need to make sure I get out of here. But we're gonna be covering the budget overview, equity metrics, some of the budget modifications that we have, and then the investments in target areas, and then we'll be able to hear from you all and have a nice discussion. We can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to open the budget overview of just reminding some of the different core services that we have. You all are fairly familiar with the Parks and Nature budget and funding, given the several years of in-depth conversations about the bond and levy programs over the past year plus. So this is a brief overview and reminder of these services that we have to help protect and restore habitat and enhance opportunities for people to connect with nature. Our overall vision is to ensure an equitable green legacy by advancing the thousands of years of land stewardship on a regional level that we've come to help be a part of. Our main areas are around acquisition of land to help protect and restore it. We provide park services and park education and nature education to help enhance that connection to nature. And then we also serve as a fund investor, providing funds to local governments and community groups so that they can develop their own park systems as well and connect with nature in ways that are meaningful for them. So the 2023-24 budget will help advance this work through a continuation of important efforts such as natural areas land acquisition and habitat stabilization that's funded by voter-approved 2006 and 2019 bond measures, and the implementation of work plans funded by the 2022 Parks and Natural Areas Levy Renewal. This levy, along with Metro's general fund, support Parks and Nature's operations and maintenance. And with that, I'll pass it over to Shantae. We can go to the next slide to get into the details of the budget.
Hello, Council President, Metro Councilors. My name is Shantae Clark, and my pronouns are she, or hers, and I am the Finance Manager for Parks and Nature. I'll be presenting on the next 4 slides, and I'll be looking at the budget in terms of our revenue and expenditure projections. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's stay on this slide for a little bit. So our budget for fiscal year 24 is $217.4 million. And this entails $44 million for our operating fund, which is approximately 25% of our fiscal 24 budget. And as John mentioned, our operating fund is the combination of the general and the levy funds. And I will go into a little bit more details about the operating fund expenditure and revenue in slides to come. Our budget also has $4 million, which is from the 2006 Natural Areas Bond. There's $165 million that's budgeted in the 2019 Parks and Nature's Bond. And then we have $2.1 million in other restricted fund sources such as renewal and replacement, Smith and Bybee, Glendoveer, and the Cemeteries Perpetual Fund. Next slide, please. So our matched expenditure allocations have 28%, which is approximately $60 million going towards materials and services, 14%, which approximate $41.1 million towards capital outlay, 10% accounting for $21.7 million going towards personnel, and $8.4 million going towards transfers, and that is primarily cap costs, which is our cost allocation fund, and $22.5 million in contingency, and another $73.5 million, which sits in our inappropriated fund balance. Next slide, please. as I mentioned earlier, our operating fund is $44 million for fiscal year '24. And with the levy renewal being successful, we're able to budget $18 million from the local option levy. General fund will be increased to $4 million for fiscal year '24. Our fund balance is also going to be around $13.5 million. We're estimating that charges for services will be about $6 million, and miscellaneous revenues from grants and such will be about $2.3 million. Next slide. So for the expenditure side of the operating fund, as you can see, most of it goes towards personnel and materials and services. For personnel, we're looking at $15.5 million for fiscal year '24. For materials and services, $13.7 million. Transfers will make up almost $6 million. And we have $8 million sitting in contingency, and we only have about $500,000 that we have budgeted towards capital outlay from the operating fund. John?
500 or 50?
50, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
This one's still you.
Is this still me? Oh.
Yeah.
Looking at the CIP, so we're looking at the 5-year forecast. For fiscal year '24, for the non-taxable portion of the 2019 bond, we're seeing $27.1 million. The operating fund is at 1.385. The Willamette Falls subfund, we only budgeted $100,000 in that fund as we're still trying to figure out what to do there. For the natural areas bond, we're looking at 1.5 for a total of $30.165 million for next year. And we're looking at fiscal year I'm looking at for this year, and we're looking at 17.85 for fiscal year '24-25, 20.965 for '25-26, 21.3 for '26-27, and around $15 million for '27-28.
And all of these 5-year rolling capital averages, we update them annually, as you know, as we get more projects that are moving from design into like more construction-ready phases. But that represents about 22 projects, and we're excited to keep all of these moving forward. We can go to the next slide, please. And transitioning into talking about some of our equity outcomes and metrics. As a reminder, Parks and Nature adopted a racial equity, diversity, and inclusion action plan in late 2018. And that plan centers around 3 primary desired outcomes. And all of our work is geared towards supporting these outcomes. In a moment, we'll talk about one key equity metric to highlight as part of the FY24 budget process. Additional equity measures are included in the proposed budget. We were asked to speak about one specifically, but I wanted to frame it by reminding we're looking at, in our department, economic equity. So how do communities of color prosper economically from the business of Parks and Nature in Greater Portland? Environmental equity, communities of color in Greater Portland enjoy the benefits of clean air, water, land, and have equitable access to safe and welcoming parks, trails, and natural areas. And then looking at cultural equity, people of color connect with nature and with one another in the region's parks and nature system. We can go to the next slide. So the key metric that we were looking at is in our efforts to support COVID firms. Supporting COVID firms through contracting ties right into our racial equity, diversity, inclusion action plan, and spending on COVID firms is going to be one of our key metrics to highlight now. Parks and Nature is proud that some of the overhaul of Blue Lake Regional Park is one of the first projects at Metro to use the Construction Careers Pathway framework. That Blue Lake Park has projects of about 14 million planned in fiscal year '24 and a total of 25 million over the next 5 years. As part of our work also in developing the bond, we were setting in aspirational targets. What we've come up with is setting a floor of at least 20% out of that Take Care of Metro Parks bond program. Contracts must go to COVID firms. We go into greater detail with those two in terms of workforce diversity, but for brevity, we looked at that 20% floor. Currently, we are about 38% of firms from the bond. So we've done well in setting a floor and always want to do more. Overall, as a department, you might recall that when I presented the annual report of fiscal year 22, co-bid firms make up 39% of the contract spending across parks and nature. Another thing I wanted to highlight is, actually, nope, those are all the things I want to highlight. On a smaller level too, while the large construction projects have a big opportunity to have a major impact on regional economy, we also make major impacts for co-bid certified firms and smaller businesses and individuals who contract with us on projects ranging from planting trees to writing articles to designing fish habitats. So there's also some of those, what might seem smaller economic scale to some when we're talking about millions of dollars, those tens and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars make big difference for some of the smaller firms. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, getting into the budget modifications. Our modifications of last year's budget are modest, and they're all geared towards helping our department meet some of the promises that Metro made to voters when they passed the bond. We had 3.5 new FTE positions that we were coming to you with. Actually, one of those positions you all approved in the March FY23 budget process. That was a program analyst to support with some of the strategic planning and park operations. So while the proposed budget might show 3.5 in your first version that you got, we're actually asking for 2.5 FTE and some associated M&S. So I talked about that program analyst position. I'm going to move up and talk briefly about the 0.5 FTE of a limited duration policy analyst position. That is to support some of the reimagining police and security work as part of the work that you all did as a council, setting forward the vision for justice and belonging. Our department also did an action plan looking at recommendations. One of those primary recommendations was to have a limited duration policy analyst to go and review parks and nature policies to look at opportunities for us to reimagine those policies or have them better aligned with this vision. We have 0.5 available FTE. This would be to match it and help us move this work forward in connection with our plan and with the COO's plan. Second position I want to talk about was the business services manager and park operations. As our portfolio has grown over the last decade, this business manager will help manage some of the key components of running this growing park system on the system services side. That allows our operations managers to be more dedicated to on-site with staff and guests to support visitor experiences and facility needs. This position will also help to manage the program analyst positions that we've requested for supporting our safety training protocols as well as strategic planning. Those program analyst positions you've already approved in previous measures and budgets, and this is an opportunity to have a manager to support them, along with some of the other administrative planning efforts and also helping us develop some better career pathways opportunities. Currently, we're just in reaction operations mode. This helps us get into more of a strategic planning mode. The final position is the archaeologist. And this was actually something that was going to be highlighted for you, I think, in a previous presentation, but I'm going first on it. So I wanted to share a little bit more about COO's interest in the agency interest in being able to help create a historic and cultural resources protection program. So you'll hear more about this in some of the COO office and GAPD office presentations, but we're looking at an opportunity to create this program that would have 2 FTE in the agency. One of those positions would actually be in the capital asset management program that Ryan Kinsella manages, and the other position would be in parks and nature. The CAM position would help us support the entire agency in policy development, compliant functions, and major capital projects, and Metro staff and contractor training. That other position that I'm requesting for Parks and Nature would be specific to our portfolio to support the 193 properties and historic cemeteries of our program that we help to manage. This is actually something that's come directly from our tribal engagement over the past year and a half of them wondering and asking where and how are we supporting and protecting cultural resources across our portfolio. So not only are there sites within Metro, within Parks and Nature, but there's other opportunities to engage on this, whether that's land use policy planning for development with local partners, government partners, regional strategies to maintain and improve transportation infrastructure across the region. Obviously, the conservation work that happens within my department and the 14 historic cemeteries, but there's also places like Hall A at the Expo that have historic cultural significance as well, and other major capital projects and programs that could be moving along. So that's the big picture of some of the work of the agency, and you'll hear more about that from others. Specific to parks and nature, it's an opportunity for us to get further ahead in these conversations with tribes. We have a lot of contracting that we do with archaeologists. This gives us the opportunity to have it in-house and help advance this work further and faster. And we can go to the next slide, please. And wrapping up, just wanted to talk about target investments in target areas. I know that you all have for the environment, for housing and the economy. No shock, we're focused on the environment as one of ways that we can help support the in target investment areas. Some of the work that we do, the levy itself, as written in the measure, 40% of that goes towards habitat restoration. Within the bond, there's $155 million towards land acquisition and protection and restoration efforts. So we see that there's a big opportunity for us to continue supporting those environmental targets and climate resilience targets that you have, and be in there working with you to help forward these efforts. From an economic impact too, I talked a little bit about the COVID investment, and there's opportunities that our funds can help to support the economy. There was an outdoor recreation study done in 2019 by the Bureau of Economic Analysis that said outdoor recreation accounts for 2.9% of Oregon's total GDP, 4.4% of total employment, and the sector grew between 24% between 2012 and 2017, or was 6% faster than the economy as a whole. I realized 10 years ago feels like forever, but there is some studies out there of the impacts of outdoor recreation in the state to support the economy. We can go to the next slide. And with that, thank you all for your leadership, support, and direction in advancing the Parks and Nature mission. As a reminder, I was trying to be brief and very high level in this presentation. I look forward to questions, comments, or concerns. And I know I've talked with some of you about some budget notes that you're interested in on things like power line trails, addressing barriers to access and public transit. So I look forward to any conversation and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, much appreciated. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Lewis, Juan?
Sure, thank you so much, Director Blaster. I think you did an amazing job of keeping that short. We could have been here for hours, because I think each and every kind of section of your budget is its own kind of body of work. I have two things. First, I'm really excited by your business analyst position. I think that's an incredibly important job, not only for working on career ladders within our agency, but also just on a responsiveness to external factors. My question is, where are you with your staff capacity on tree canopy? City of Portland is not in the place that they once were on tree canopy, and with our climate and equity goals, I can think of no greater investment than tree canopy. And it seems like not only are we gonna need to do our own program, but maybe fill some holes.
Those are good and pointed questions at some of our local partners, so I want to also be mindful. Our capacity to take on tree canopy within our own portfolio is something that we're also looking at. And I realize that's different from an urban tree canopy, but having 18,000 acres of trees, we have one arborist who's their full-time job. We have many staff that are certified arborists. We've been looking at our hazardous tree policy. We support in some of the mapping efforts around us, mostly on like Oregon white oak and things that we're trying to do from a conservation standpoint. But we've been in several conversations with folks that are interested in tree canopy. We've had conversations with the Nature Conservancy, Blueprint Foundation, Urban Green Space Institute, who are working on the Connecting Canopies project. They've asked us to support, be a partner, but they haven't yet decided what that role might look like. Recently, the USDA passed along some funding opportunities. Got staff looking at that, trying to see where that might be able to fit in, and we could be a convener or a pass-through. I think the biggest reality is that we've looked at local jurisdictions to manage their urban forestry programs, and where can we offer support, guidance, and thoughts. If this council feels that us taking a different role in that is a priority in terms of what that could look like, I'm not quite sure, but our capacity to take on other people's trees is limited. And I don't know if I could put a real figure to that of say what it would cost, because there's the various stages of the life cycle of the tree canopy, so.
Okay. Well, just to acknowledge that there are already those other tables put together, and I don't think it's on us to convene groups that are already being convened, but I'm glad you've got staff capacity to show up at those. And I might be interested in follow-up conversation offline about a targeted pilot to a couple of, to your point that we can't do it all, but if we can put some boundaries around a pilot, I would be interested in doing more.
And I know we talked about large-scale community visions on Tuesday. We were hoping to see some proposal around that, because that had been something of interest that this council had talked about, and we didn't see any proposals to be able to find a way to kind of capitalize those efforts and then figure out the ongoing maintenance. So I definitely owe you some time to sit down and talk through more of this.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Wong, then Rosenthal.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Eva team, for this presentation. My question is related to the archaeologist position. Really interested in that line of work, and kind of for a really specialized, like scientific positions. Like how is the department able to support folks in those roles when they're like the only person in the agency that really knows and does that kind of work? And, creating collaborations with, like research universities, or, I guess, like, what is their support network to make sure they know of all the varied, like, tasks that kind of come along with that? And also just, why full-time in-house and not like a partnership with a research institute or something like that?
Yeah, that's great questions, and I blazed through all of that pretty quickly. Some of the support is this person could interface with the State Historic Preservation Office that has a team of archaeologists or anthropologists and others. And there's requirements that we currently have to engage with SHPO through our historic cemeteries, the Bybee House at Howell Territorial Park. And so there's those opportunities to interface there. Recently, Katie McDonald with the Tribal Affairs Program got us connected with the City of Salem's archaeologist and sort of historic preservation officer to learn what it looks like of having a preservation office at a city level or local or jurisdiction rather than at a state level. So we've begun to have those conversations. Having different unique services and skill sets is not unusual within our department and within our agency, so it's not uncommon for someone to have sort of a unique skill set that we can support. Currently, we're contracting, like I said, several $100,000 in archaeologists to help us with maybe at $100,000. I have to pull the exact numbers, but we're already have multiple contracts out with archaeologists. The challenge that we have to do is sometimes wait for those folks to be able to be available. For some of the work that we do, we literally require having someone on site to watch every scoopful. You all have seen this in other transportation, major capital construction, ground disturbance, like having someone on site. So being able to have someone on staff will help us level up our game across our entire portfolio, be able to be more responsive to the the tribe's historic preservation offices as well. And if we have that other position within the agency, there's a chance to look at the big picture as well as the more specific within the department. So, and yes, we'll look at other opportunities to continue collaborating with local education institutions and things like that.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Council President?
Yeah.
I just wanted to note that Katie McDonald from GAPD is here if there are questions about the other part of that program. We had originally scheduled GAPD to do their budget presentation before Parks, and so you would have, in the original schedule, you would have had like the background of that overall program before you heard about this specific position. So just so you know that resource is available to you.
You can follow up. Yeah, thank you, much appreciated. All right, Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to piggyback, first of all, on a question that Councilor Lewis asked, is do we have the capacity, one of the big things with tree canopy is mapping. Do we have the capacity to do thematic mapping of tree canopy deserts? It's something that most cities wouldn't have the capacity to do. Do we have that capacity? Or is that something we could assist with?
I would have to get back to you on that. I'm looking around, I see one of our GIS specialists here, and I know that one of the other ones was watching, but I believe that we do support some of that mapping, some of those mapping efforts. So I just have to be able to see specifically what we could do in support of that.
It's a regional service that we might be able to help some of the small, particularly the smaller cities that may not have it. And then my other question is, I was a little confused about the bond. You had one thing with 73 million, I believe, is unexpended bond. And we're about halfway through the 2019 bond in commitments. Is that correct? Or are we less than that?
No, we're less than that. So part of what it is unallocated fund reserve that we wanted to have in preparation for, in the event that we get tons of landowners running to us saying, here, buy this, buy that, or that our local jurisdictional partners, have all their projects going through really fast. So it's being prepared to have that fund balance, but then what we have in terms of capital outlay, like those are things that are specifically have projects attached to them, so.
Okay, so that was capital outlay. And then in the last slide, you had 155 million of bond expenditures. And
Yeah, the 155 million is the total program amount for the protect and restore land out of that $475 million bond. So 155 of that program has 155 million for land acquisition is that program.
And so how much do we have left in the bond that has not been committed?
Yeah, we have about 38 million spent and about 24 million that has been allocated. So that's a total of 62, which leaves us with another 400,000 that is still being moved through.
Okay.
Yeah. Those are very rough back of the napkin.
I just want an approximation.
Thank you. Counselor Nolan.
Thank you, Madam President. Could you bring back up the slide on metrics, equity metrics, key metrics? I don't know what slide number it was. And Mr. Blasher, I have more faith in your team than you seem to. You've achieved 38%, if I'm reading that slide correctly, but you're only setting a target of 20%. If we think we've got that one knocked and in the bag, what can you offer that's more ambitious, that stretches your team to the capacity I'm confident they have?
I appreciate that. I have tremendous confidence in the team. We set this in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic when we were running around and we weren't sure what things were going to look like. And we wanted to make sure, rather than setting a target, we wanted to set a floor. And so this is a strategy of setting a floor of 20%. I think that now that we're 3 years into the bond, we have an opportunity to go and revisit what that might look like. We've also been trying to get a better sense of how do we actually track the metrics. Our systems don't speak very well when you're looking at COVID certified firms of the various, whether it's minority, women owned or small emerging businesses, and they don't speak great with our data like finance metrics. So making sure that we've got real accurate data and trends. I've been looking at the 5-year median of where we've been landing, and it is higher. So I'm hearing interest from you to bump that up and continue to be more and more ambitious. We figure if we...
No easy A's in this class, Mr. Blasher.
Well, I appreciate that. I was more of a B+ student, so I'll be honest. B's get degrees. But I realized it's the only way I could get through grad school. But I know that we are Metro, so we are A+++.
Yes.
Just like our credit rating. Yes.
I'd encourage you to update that if it's 3 years old.
I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
And
Yeah, we'll
Madam
go back and take a look at that.
Chief Operating Officer, we can be more ambitious.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, I can't recover from B's getting degrees. Being the B+ student that I was. I guess the only question I had, Dr. Blasher, was related to the acceleration of the implementation of the bond measure, and what measures have you put into the budget to move that forward?
Yeah, your Chief Operating Officer, Marisa Madrigal, has done a fantastic job of bringing us together with the CFO, HR Director, the Metro Attorney, the Capital Asset Manager, Ryan Kinsella, our bond program directors, and really going through and looking at where are there opportunities to ramp those things up. Some of the things that we've done is, added more real estate negotiators. We've made some changes to traditionally with the land acquisition, we have what's called a 10% memo. If they're ever going 10% over the appraised price, bring in a memo to the COO to say, hey, do we want to do this? We've been conservative on that in the past. We're bringing more of those forward. We're also ramping up how we get more just outreach to landowners. So the land acquisition program is one that we have more control over. It's still a willing seller program, but we spent a lot of time looking at that one. On the capital investment side for Take Care of Metro Park, some of the things that we've done is by having these convenings, looking differently at how does the CPMO office and our landscape architect planners start working more closely together. Also looking at maybe there's opportunities as an agency to look at procurement. Right now, we're like waiting on pipes to do Blue Lake water projects. So are there other pipe projects we have kind of, how can we look as an agency for opportunities to reduce those things? We moved up some things quicker. Remember with the Trails program, we combined that with the RUFA process to get those $20 million of trail grants awards out, so that's great. Right now, we're at a place with local share where we thought we had partners that were ready to have a lot of projects going fast, but they're facing some of the same challenges we are. So we'll begin looking at more of like local share and how can we encourage them to submit more projects quicker, and what are opportunities for us to spend those funds quicker. We had our large scale community visions conversation, and looks like there's an appetite and interest in continuing to move that one faster. So we're looking at all of any internal roadblocks that there might be, and then trying to acknowledge also external roadblocks, and do what we can to get ahead of things, combine them. So we're looking at a lot of different things and trying to be, keep it moving along.
Great, that's good news and much appreciated. It sounds like we're moving from kind of a linear process to parallel tracks of trying to keep things moving, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
much
trying to stack
appreciated.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, counselors, on the Parks and Nature budget? Nope. Okay, thank you. Much appreciated, good work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody who worked on that. Counselors, we'll move on to the Chief Operating Officer Communication.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. Hello again, councilors. For today's update, I just wanted to take a quick moment to brag on the work of two of our colleagues in the Data Resource Center. So to your question, Councilor Rosenthal, earlier about mapping, Julie Stringham and Christine Rattan, who they were among the keynote speakers at the Esri Developer Summit in Palm Springs, California last month, in front of a live audience of 2,000 people with another 8,000 people watching online. Julie and Christine shared Metro's GIS story, a story that reaches back 3 decades and touches on Metro's origins as a regional government charged with managing Greater Portland's growth. Julie and Christine told the audience of GIS professionals from across the world about how Metro has evolved its approach to data accessibility and how through 30 years of collaboration and technical innovation, Metro is now hosting data through an online hub. The accessibility of this hub lowers barriers to entry and further democratizes the data and is leading to more equitable decision-making and policies. They were educational, entertaining, and funny, and were incredible ambassadors for Metro and the amazing work that the data resource team has been doing and does every day. So I want to thank them for representing us with such expertise and humility. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, definitely. Counselors, any other communication for the day?
I guess I do.
Counselor I'm sorry, there's a whole lineup before you.
Okay.
Counselor Wong, Counselor Lewis, and then Counselor Rosenthal.
I can't see the hands.
Great. I just wanted to give an update. We had our MPAC meeting last night, and we had some great presentations on the 2040 planning grants that are coming out. I think there's a lot of interest from local partners to apply for those. And then we had our first look at the submitted RTP projects, and a lot of great conversation there as well. And then this evening, we'll be meeting with our newly appointed core members at a kickoff meeting this evening. So looking forward to that. Thank you.
Great. Counselor Lewis.
Sure, colleagues, I wanted to report back after attending the Supportive Housing Services Oversight Committee on Monday. That group is moving forward with some recommendations, one of which is that our staff work to address challenges faced in the field right now with how contracting works with the community groups and partners and our counties All three counties generally use a reimbursement model, and at times they're outside of a 60-day window for their reimbursement, which makes it quite impossible to even keep going, forget, expand. So that's the punchline for where the system really needs some attention right now, and it was heard loud and clear by our staff that that oversight committee wants us to be part of the solution.
Great, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah. First of all, I have to say I'm a real supporter of RIS services and the database, and so the more we do, the better. I'm happy about that. I have a couple things to report on. First of all, the Natural Areas Oversight Committee met this week, and they've been up since '21, and they're coming close to producing a report, which will be coming to us, I think, in June. They have, you know, three major goals. One is community engagement, racial equity, and climate resilience, but also financial. They had 3 task force, which have been working on task force reports, which will then be blended into the report. That's the land acquisition task force, a bond community engagement task force, and a bond finance. So they're actually going to address, you know, the equity, the community outreach, as well as the efficacy of the bond apportionment program. So that was a pretty interesting committee meeting that's been going on, and it'll be coming back to us in the near future. Another thing is that my policy advisor, Eduardo, and I have been doing a sort of a roadshow to all the small cities in the area, giving them basically a basic update, and they've been pretty interested in the update of what Metro's doing regarding a whole bunch of things, whether it's solid waste, land use, transportation, and so forth. Particularly, we've been to Tigard, King City, and Tualatin, and so far Wilsonville tomorrow. Then a couple weeks after that is Durham, and then comes Beaverton, and then comes Sherwood. One of the things that we've been talking to them a lot about, and they're particularly interested in the smaller cities, is the Regional Refresh Fund, which you know is a fairly new program, or a renamed program, more or less than new. And the upcoming, as Councilor Wong said, is the 2040 grant processes. So these conversations are always very informative, and sometimes they have interesting questions on various aspects of transportation. Attended the WEA Regional Growth meeting this morning. That was pretty interesting. Talked a lot, as I hadn't realized that North Plains has one of the 500-acre sites that the state is looking at as potential. If that actually becomes a development site, that's going to have impacts on North Plains as well as on a lot of the neighbors that are in our district. That's interesting. I took the liberty of asking the panel, which included PGE, Northwest Natural, North Plains, and Genetec, basically, what can Metro do to help? I got interesting answers. Coordination with the counties in more regards, with transportation was one of them. So that was sort of an interesting approach. And North Plains is, as you know, one of the fastest growing areas in the state. Another one, a couple of the cities have had State of the Cities addresses, and everybody seems to be in a pretty good mood right at the moment. Things are going forward. Tolling, I guess, actually, there was a luncheon yesterday. President Peterson was there as well. The Habitat for Humanity had a Home Forward kind of meeting. There were 1,000 people, which shows there's a great deal of interest in providing housing for people. And obviously, we've talked a little bit about making that connection between developing rental units and developing homes and providing some connections so that people can end up with ownership and build equity. And so that was a big issue that was being brought up by Habitat for Humanity. And finally, many people know this, and some on the council, is that as the legislature dropped a specific bill that would propose, and it has quite a bit of juice, as they say, to delay tolling on the 205 corridor for 2 years, because the cities, particularly the southern tier, are rather unhappy about the kind of responses they received from ODOT. And so it has quite a bit of sponsorship, and it has at least the semi-support, you might say, not official support of the Senate President. So this could move forward and could change some of the ways in which we interact with ODOT and move forward on regional pricing.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands raised, I've just got a couple things. Let me bring you up to date on RTAC, the Regional Tolling Advisory Committee. I think that I can safely say that it is a committee full of very disgruntled members because we have been inundated with studies, but no actual discussion about projects for mitigation of diversion. So it is clearly the mood of the committee that we are kind of overhearing the studies and want to engage on the environmental assessment comments, what's coming out of that, because I think it feeds into what Councilor Rosenthal was talking about of what are we hearing, and that is that ODOT has not done their job, and we are not ready to really move forward yet. So what does that mean in terms of what does need to be done? And so the next meeting, I'm on the agenda setting committee with Commissioner Nafisa Faye and Commissioner Paul Savas. And we basically laid down the law that we did not want to move forward with anything else but discussion about the EA and the comments from it. On a brighter note, I was able to attend, thank you colleagues, in Washington DC, the Portland Business Association and Seattle Chamber Joint Lobby. It was the best of both worlds for me, being able to watch colleagues from both sides of the border interact and talk about, with our congressional delegation and the Washington congressional delegation, I-5 bridge, high-speed rail, which they are very, very supportive of moving forward and very much wanting more engagement from the side of the river and hoping to get that soon. Obviously, fentanyl came up for both cities in a big way in mental health. So those are, I'd say, the four big categories of things that were discussed. It turns out that there were also two other things that were happening in DC at the same time. Our zoo director, Heidi Ron, was also at an AZA meeting in DC, and I was able to meet up with her and meet the head of the head of AZA and have a really good talk with him. And so it's good because we are a lone age. We have an interesting relationship with a Metro Council and a zoo, something that they don't normally engage with. And so that was the first time I think that AZA had gotten to actually have a conversation and understand, what our role is and how we see it. So it was good. Zoo folks are very happy that karma happened. And then the National Building Trades were also in town, and I was able to connect both with Robert Camarillo of the Oregon State Trades as well as Mark Riker of the Washington State Trades, where we had an intense conversation about the I-5 bridge and making sure that both sides of the river are moving forward and the types of things that are included in that community benefits and project labor agreements. So it was good to see everybody and have a moment to talk with folks from both sides of the river. So with that, if there are no other communications, I will call the meeting adjourned and just thank you colleagues and thank you staff for helping us get through a very difficult conversation and moving forward. So thank you.
Recording.